I'm Frauke. I'm working for Kiel University in northern Germany, and I'm working for an innovation project in teaching and learning, the Perle project, which is a government-funded project, and I'm working there in some projects with students and with teachers, and we work on learning and teaching innovation. And as I was saying, so we have a very here at university. We have some students here, we have some activists here, we have one person who's working in politics, and also we invited students from my social entrepreneurship class. So there's the Students for Future, who are actually organizing this whole week of the public climate school, which is opening up universities across Germany on climate change issues. There's a full program, and we're part of this program as well. And I have Paulina and Fabi with me, also part of my social entrepreneurship class, but also part of the group of Students for Future Kiel, who are running the local program in Kiel. So that's really nice that all of you came today. And just to give you a little bit of the purpose of why are we meeting, because we are such a diverse group, and I think a lot of people joined with different intentions. But my invitation actually was to give you an overview so you can learn about framework and personal reflections, and the artwork from a multidisciplinary course on climate change, which happened at the University of Regina in Canada, which is represented by Sarah Abbott, who was the lecturer and will be running the course again. So this is, I think, also a nice reflection space for her as well to actually run the new course. And then we have two students out of many more students who actually presented a couple of weeks earlier their work, where I was present in a similar Zoom session like this. And I picked Mika, Abbott, and Amy Snider because they were really touching my personal interest in combining art as well as an entrepreneurial process and reflecting on their experience in climate change issues. And they will present some of their work and also reflect on some of the experiences in the class that they had. To give you a brief overview of what we're doing in these now 1 minute and 15 minutes left, 1 hour and 15 minutes left. So we're having this short introduction now, which will be followed by an introduction to the course by Sarah as the lecturer. And then we have Mika and Amy speaking about their work that was happening in the class. Then the four of us will have a reflective dialogue, and then there is networking time in smaller breakout rooms afterwards. So any questions that are coming up for you, you can already like grab a pen and paper if you want and put down your question, and then you can actually move into the networking time with the three of them. And we will meet again briefly to have a wrap up of the session together. If there's any technical questions that you might have in between, so if you can actually have a look at the bottom of your screen. There's this panel. There's a chat function where Fabi and Paulina will have a look. And if there's technical issues, for example, you cannot hear us or you're confused with where to go at some point with the breakouts, then just write in the chat. You can address them directly, personally, or you can also put things in the chat for everybody to read. So that's something that you might want to use throughout the session. And I just want to, because I was saying, so we're going on a field trip. So some of us are based in Kiel. I have one of my distant colleagues in Switzerland who actually joined us as well today. So I'm very happy, Monica, that you're here as well today. And I was asking myself a couple of weeks back, and I went to the field trip and I didn't even know where Regina was. So we're going to Canada. It's right in the middle of Canada. It has like roughly 230,000 inhabitants. So it's roughly the size of Kiel, which some of you might know. I don't think, Monica, if you have been to Kiel yet, but it's pretty much almost the same size. The university has, I think I read somewhere, 15,000 students and 10 faculties. So comparing it to our universities, we have 25,000 students and 8 faculties. So also it's a little bit similar, I would say. And just to give you a very rough idea of where it's located, I just looked it up on Google Maps again today. So Regina is between Calgary and Winnipeg, somewhere in the middle. So the ones from there are nodding, so the information is not that wrong. And Kiel is actually on the way between Hamburg and Copenhagen, which is in Denmark. So to give you an idea of where we are. Yeah, so let's move on to engaging climate change, which was the name of the course that we're talking about today. And I have agreed with the speakers that they will actually introduce themselves. So we can actually start right away with a brief presentation that they have prepared for you. We have pictures as well and artwork that's being presented. So they will share some of their screens as well. And and I'm looking forward, and I'm giving the floor now to Sarah, who will introduce you to the course a bit more.
Thank you so much, Frauke. I am just so pleased to be here with you guys. I'm a little distracted because I'm trying to, I guess I'll spotlight myself. It was just such an honor and a thrill to be joining the public climate school in Germany. And Frauke, thank you so much again for inviting us. My name is Sarah Abbott, and I've been teaching here at the University of Regina, mainly in film production because I'm a filmmaker, for 16 years. And I have been branching out a little bit through my doctorate work, which is interdisciplinary social sciences, into non-human and climate change teaching. So I think before I get into telling you about the course, I'll begin the way that we usually begin the course, which is to ask you all to collect yourselves to this moment and maybe close your eyes if you like and take 3 breaths just to ground, to let go of everything that happened before this moment and everything that's coming after our time here together. And I invite you to join me in your own way in acknowledging the land that you're on and you're connected to, and that feeds your body, soul, and mind, your community, our life here as a species, interacting with many, many other species. And we're all part of a climate change presentation, so I know that that's a meaningful thing for you to do. Okay, so I will talk about kind of 3 main things. I'll give a general gist about the course, and then I'll bring some pretty simple PowerPoint slides up and talk about the interdisciplinary element of the course, the assignments, the student work, and the public event that we had. So the course came to me as an idea when I was attending a conference on climate change, and during the conference there was a whole day dedicated to youth. And throughout the conference I was constantly asking myself, and the conference was asking us, you know, what can you do, what can you do? And I think we often think that constantly as people who are very concerned about the changing climate and the environment. And I realized, well, I'm a professor here at the University of Regina, and I have youth at my fingertips. So I went to my dean and I asked her if I could create this class in climate change, and she immediately said yes, which was such a gift to me because I was so excited about it. So I decided that it needed to be interdisciplinary. So it's housed in the Faculty of Media, Art and Production, but it is a course that is open to anybody in the university. We had several students who were mature students, so it was really nice to have undergraduate, kind of typical age undergraduate students mixing with different age students for almost like an intergenerational mix of students. It was really important to me to have the interdisciplinary element because we need to be thinking about things in a holistic way, which means not separating things in different disciplines. And to have this kind of cross-fertilization between disciplines as well. And I like that it allows a kind of freedom, maybe more freedom even, when a student is working in a way that they know, but they're being introduced to new ideas and new opportunities and new invitations to work in different ways, and to connect and to explore beyond their own discipline. The structure of the course was me sharing on the themes, and then the students would, towards the end of the course, be sharing back in terms of the assignments, the 3 assignments that they had, which I will go over. Something that was really important to me right from the beginning was it's not really an introduction, but to introduce it to the course, to bring it to the course, the continuum of hope and despair that we are always on as individuals, and that I would be bringing my students through purposefully, so that, we often hear about everything with climate change and have our own experiences of hope and despair, but we don't necessarily even get to the deeper points of understanding actually how dire the situation is. And so we often talked about that, the hope and despair. So I'll go into a little more detail now. I'm going to bring up my PowerPoint. So the class is called Engaging Climate Change, Creativity, Community, Intervention. And those were very purposefully chosen words so that it would be an engagement with climate change, and recognizing the importance of creativity, the importance of community, and as an intervention, as a stepping in with the engagement. And I chose this image because it was kind of our poster class image. Okay, so this is the course description, and I highlighted the different themes that were working in terms of the interdisciplinarity. So the resilience, personal resilience, mostly, even there's also, when we look online, there's also a lot of information about resilience of communities and businesses. Building personal resilience, I think, is really, really important. Community is another theme there. And within that theme, we looked at activist groups, and we did a carbon footprint test. We were getting ready to do a climate cafe that was public, but unfortunately that fell in the first week of the social isolation that we're all engaging because of COVID-19. And also I had a workshop with a guest on personal narratives, and looked at core values as well. And Indigenous worldviews, I think, are crucial to the conversation on climate. And we had a guest come in, a local woman who's engaged with Indigenous climate action. And that was a very, very moving class. And the students, I heard from them afterwards, a lot of them really appreciated it. Science, of course, is really important. And science isn't always something that we talk about in a fine arts faculty, but it is crucial to understanding how the system, the Earth system, is being affected by the impacts of human presence. Artist engagements, how artists are working with, communicating about climate issues, local and global projects, and thinking outside the box in the face of change. I'll come back to that in a moment. Okay. So the assignments, there were 3 in addition to the participation element, the engaging climate change paper, and you can see that it was a subject on anyone's choosing. And these are very, very brief outlines of the assignments, of course. The changing the box assignment, which I'll talk about next, and then a final project, which again is on the subject of the students choosing. For some reason, sorry, okay, so there we have the changing the box assignment. And again, everything's really open for the student, which can be kind of daunting because it's nice to have some direction. However, I wanted them to kind of exercise their agency in choice and in activism as well. So a key part of the class, although I've written it here in the changing the box assignment, was to keep a journal. And a lot of the students did that. And it's a way to kind of, it's a place to go and talk about you know, how things were as we moved along the hope and despair continuum. And some of those students worked their journal notes into their assignments. And then the form for the changing the box, often assignments come in as something that aligns with a particular discipline or a paper. And so I just opened it up. So if somebody was a photography student, for example, they could do a rant or a song or a film or a piece of creative writing or podcast. Also, a paper was also accepted as well. And then the content, these are just examples that I gave to the students where they could go to a council meeting, reflect on their own personal change, have, you know, engage in workshops about resilience or leadership. And I'm just skimming really what's here. And this changing the box assignment is posted on the blog that's associated with this talk. So then the rubric too, it can be difficult, I think, sometimes for people to create an interdisciplinary class and grade work that might be outside their home discipline. So what I did to deal with that was kind of had general, I guess, themes or goals for the class, for the assignment, and then I would grade it according to those. So you can see them all listed here. I think these are all really important because it's really, one of the goals of the class was to help students learn more about climate change so that they could talk about it with the people around them more. So clarity of expression there helps with that. Okay. So some of the work that came in, well, all the work was quite diverse. So we, as I mentioned, we had a carbon calculator, and we all did this as part of one reading for 1 week. And then one of the students decided that he would create a kind of survey and ask people various questions related to that carbon calculator, have them do it. And this was the last graph, and it's, would you consider trying to do these suggestions in your regular life? So I thought that was a really unique way to engage change in the people around him. We had a student who was an exchange student from Mexico, and she took this photograph of our prairie landscape, and she felt that she kind of, through the class, had a kind of opening to really look around and value and see the nature around her. One student did a video on her, it was kind of a journal actually, where she directly addressed the camera as part of her journal, and then she incorporated into a video and talked about ways that she was reducing her own footprint and just being more environmentally friendly, getting rid of too many clothes and too many cosmetics and getting outside. So these are just a couple of moments from the class, from that video. And we had an education student in the class who created a 5-part unit for students in grade primary school, so around grade 2, give or take there. And she created, this is an example of the materials and resources. And she included this children's book by Ingrid Alsich, Artemis Flies to the Rescue, as one of her resources for the students to work with. And this piece, this whole unit is online. You can link to it from my website. And this was a video that was about animal resilience in climate change, which was very moving. There was also an audio piece that was created, and some students reviewed like an essay and spoke. And now I'm kind of moving into the field trip engaging or changing the climate, which was the public offering of our work for the public. It was really important to me to have public components in the class in order for the students to carry that work out into the public and to bring the public into our classroom, so there would be a chance of learning on, as the two parts of our worlds met. And there were, I just also want to say that, we were supposed to do it at a venue here, and of course COVID-19 happened, so we were already planning to do a live stream with a platform for climate discussions called Now What. And so we just went straight through Now What, and Now What hosted for us. And it was really amazing because we could tap right into their an international network, which was really exciting for the students, and how we met Frauke. And the students, that video is actually also posted on my website, and it is such a beautiful, unique experience, I think. And I've had so many comments to that regard, where students were sharing some of the works that I just shared with you. And some people like Amy and Mika will be presenting elements of what they presented for that event, and like a kind of a pep talk for climate. So the really great diversity, and it was such a success to do it that way. And we decided to do 5 to 7 minutes per student to make it like kind of a feature film experience. And we came upon that format as a class. It was actually Amy that suggested the 5 to 7 minutes. So it just made things work so much better, so great. Okay, so my time is running out, and maybe it's run out a few minutes ago. So there's so much to say, and we can talk more about it, of course. And again, all of this information is on my website. So I'll post that in the chat. Okay, thank you. Over to you, Mika.
Okay, hello. I'm just gonna make this a little bit smaller so I can see my notes. Hi, I'm just gonna quickly introduce myself before I allow Sarah to screen share my work while I read my artist statement for you. So my name is Mika Abbott. I'm a photographer and printmaker born in Regina, Saskatchewan. I just actually graduated with my Bachelor of Fine Arts from the University of Regina. Kind of a weird way to end a degree with my university convocation being canceled, the remainder of my semester being put online. Just a little bit of a weird way to end a degree, but this class was actually one of the highlights of my last semester, so I'm happy to be able to be here and kind of share a bit of my experience with that. And so my work engages with themes surrounding identity, the environment, and climate crisis, and how memory shapes our understanding of each of these. Recently, in the past year, I began punching holes into my photographs and then layering them to create a new image, an alternative perception of reality. Okay. I keep wanting to call you Sarah. Sorry, my cousin's name is Sarah. Sarah, would you be able to screen share my work for me? All right, and so she's just going to scroll through the images. I'll give you guys about a minute to do that, to sit with each each image. There's 3 of them, and so yeah, are you able to do that? Okay. So this was a piece that I created for Sarah's final project. Um, as she said, we had the option to do a number of different things, but photography is my focus, and so I thought that I would create something that fitted with that. So Punctured Prairie Landscape consists of 3 digital works that each include multiple layered photographs with holes removed in the top layers to reveal a fragment of the image below it. I began to think of photographs as representations of memory and the holes as an incomplete recollection of consciousness. Often photographs are thought of as the true reflection of reality, a reliable form of documentation, and accurate source of information. And this is how we think of our own perception and memory, a truth teller. From this knowledge, we shape our identity and understanding of the present, the earth and the land on which we reside, the resources we take and use, and this is a recurring theme in my work, a discussion I'm in constant pursuit of. The holes represent acknowledging and deconstructing what we originally thought to be true or the complete truth. We each deliver a unique perspective and set of ideas, thought patterns, learned behaviors, coping mechanisms, but relying on ourselves and our own knowledge will be detrimental. We cannot succeed in this way. The earth cannot succeed if we are not continually checking ourselves, our privilege, our willingness to learn and adapt, our role and relationship with the earth and other beings that occupy it. We must be willing to change and challenge our accepted way of living. We cannot go on this way. And this was influenced by the words of Gandhi, which Sarah introduced to us on the first day of classes. He says, "Your beliefs become your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits become your values, and your values become your destiny." And we cannot sit in the comfort zone and simply accept the ill fate of our earth that we're heading towards. We have to go back to the beginning and change our beliefs and our understanding of our relationship with the earth. We must change our ways of thinking and speaking to ourselves and others, the actions we are willing or unwilling to take. And we must change our habits, or we can change our habits if we try, and we can change our destiny if we decide to. And so that quote that she introduced us to at the very beginning really affected how I would go on throughout the class and how I began to think of this final project. And so the different layers of Punctured Prairie Landscape represent the vast complexities of a relationship to the earth and climate change. Humans should not exist in competition with the land and other living things, with each other, but alongside each other. However, climate change is evidence of disharmony between humans and earth. The holes remind us of an uncertain future while reflecting on the chaos that can easily entangle, establishing fear and a sense of entitlement rather than promoting action and adaptation. So yeah, I don't have quite as long as a little speech, but that is a little introduction to my work, and I'll go in further into it when we go through our rounds. But I'm going to hand it over to Amy. Thank you, Sarah.
Hi, everyone. Can everybody hear me all right?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. So my name's Amy Snider, and brief introduction. I've just recently finished a post-baccalaureate certificate program in visual arts, and I'm just about to begin a Master's of Fine Arts in the University of Regina as well. And I'll tell you a little bit about myself and my art practice and my activist work, and then talk a bit about a few reflections that I was able to have via the assignments in Sarah's climate change class. So I'm just going to share my screen with you right now and get started. And titled this, thanks to Frauke's help, my climate change journey. And as I said, I'm just going to begin with a bit of an introduction of where I'm coming from and what I've been doing lately, so that you'll have a bit of a better understanding of the reflective part of my presentation today. And that means that I'm going to begin by subjecting you to a few family vacation photos, starting with a few images from here. We're talking to you, as you know, from the middle of Canada, where we have the Great Canadian Prairie. This is a typical scene from Saskatchewan, the province in which I live right now. And Saskatchewan definitely has its own natural beauty, and I really enjoy living here and going on many road trips and exploring this landscape. But I'm actually from, well, I was raised in the province of British Columbia, the westernmost province in Canada, and it has an entirely different landscape. It includes a swath of the Great Canadian Rocky Mountains. And so this is part of the landscape that to me feels like home, or Heimat, to borrow one of your words. And every year my small family and I make a road trip out to visit the Rocky Mountains and to take in their vast sweeping views and enjoy breathing in and being surrounded by the fauna and flora that exist in this beautiful place. What's specifically important to me is to spend some time among the lakes, the glacial lakes of the Canadian Rocky Mountains. I am a water lover, a lake lover, and I also love color. And the colors in these Canadian glacial lakes are almost, you'd think that they were artificial. And no, I haven't photoshopped any of these photos at all, but they are just outstanding shades of blue. And you might think that I'm slightly crazy, but I actually love to swim in these frigid lakes in water that was just recently glacier, surrounded by what's left of the glaciers. And it's the most invigorating thing that I've experienced in my life, and I highly recommend it to anybody, as long as you don't have a heart condition, perhaps. And I've got a 10-year-old son, and I am really delighted that I'm raising him to also be able to appreciate and relish these beautiful landscapes and this feeling of being in them fully. And here's a picture of him frolicking in one of the rivers that is flowing out of those glacial lakes in the Rocky Mountains. This is the Columbia River. We both really love spending time. And one of the things that I particularly enjoy is just immersing myself in the glacial sediment. This is a material called silt. It's the finest, silkiest, smoothest material, I think, known to mankind. I love standing in it, feeling it ooze between my toes. And we just revel in immersing ourselves physically, spiritually in this land, and taking it in and just feeling the land on us, and feeling what it does to our skin. And so this is a part of my year that sort of sustains me throughout the rest of the year, the fall and the winter. And for anyone who doesn't know, Saskatchewan is very, very cold in winter. And so these memories of these places in the mountains and this time in the summer, really, it fills my bank to help me get through the rest of the year, especially the winter here in Saskatchewan. And at the same time, though, as I'm often thinking back to these beautiful places and all the enjoyment that I had, I can't help but notice in the news the almost daily headlines of the catastrophic effects of climate change. And often there will be even headlines referring to glaciers themselves, and the very fact that these amazing things that we know so little about are actually going extinct as one of the terrible consequences of climate change. And it, of course, saddens me, and I can't even fully understand how deep the pain is that that I feel because of the disappearance of these glaciers, but also the larger issue that this is pointing at, which is really the destruction of the beautiful world that we know right now in so many ways. And I try and deal with that by, in part, becoming more of an activist. In the last couple of years, I've been participating in the climate strikes within the last year. I think next is a picture. You'll see me on the right side of the frame, looking like a very proud mom of a young climate activist. And I've joined a few other organizations, such as we have the David Suzuki Foundation here in Canada, and I have participated with Extinction Rebellion, which is starting to build up a presence in this province. So this is one way that I'm able to confront the issue and feel as though I'm trying my best to address it and take actions to fight climate change. Another thing I've been doing is in my art practice, trying to deal with the issue of climate change and the feelings that I have about this issue via my work. And this is one of a series of pieces I've made that are metaphorical representations of melting glaciers using the archetype of the cup. I find the cup is a symbol of drinking, and actually a lot of the water that we have here in the prairies is glacial runoff or mountain snow and rain runoff. So for me, there's a big connection that way. Been pleased that in the last little while, I've been developing myself as an emerging young artist, and I had my work in a show recently. The show was titled House on Fire, and it included the work of 11 other student artists from the University of Regina, all dealing with different environmental issues. And it felt great to be a part of that. And in addition, I'm really honored that I've been nominated for a couple of awards for my artistic work. And I don't expect to win, but just the very fact that I was nominated for an International Sculpture Award and another national award here in Canada has made me feel really, really happy. Like I'm finally starting to get somewhere that I've always wanted to be and never really could even dream of becoming. That is, to be an activist and to be an artist were ambitions that I never even imagined I'd be able to work towards. And at the same time, though, I've been starting to realize that there are many questions rolling around in my head, such as, is it right to be proud of one's contribution to this cause? And is busyness a form of distraction? Because I certainly have been very busy picking away at becoming an artist and an activist while also working full-time and having a family. And how can one immerse oneself in climate change without succumbing to complete despair? So by the time winter came around, and I was so excited to see Sarah offer this class on climate change through the Faculty of Media, Art and Performance, I absolutely wanted to take the course. And I thought that this would be a good time for me to take a step back and do some reflecting and notice changes that have been happening in me, question my own patterns of behavior, question my motivations, take care of myself, and mostly make sure that I can avoid burnout or other crises. And so for the first assignment I did in Sarah's class, which was the paper, I used this one resource. I'll share two resources with you that I really appreciated getting to know through Sarah's class. And the first one here is this really brief but wonderful book called Convergence with Nature, A Taoist Perspective by David E. Cooper. I'll just run through very quickly a couple of key takeaways that I got from this book, and it's in my Works Cited page, and I can share the source with anyone who wants to read it or know more about it. But sure enough, Cooper was able to kind of confirm that indeed activist commitment can involve illusion or pretense. So In other words, I had been concerned that all my ambitions of being a climate activist and becoming, I guess, a climate artist I might have had some ulterior motives. And I wanted to just really question the reasons that I have these drives and make sure that there is nothing unpure about them, or that I understand where they're coming from and what purpose they fill in my own life. And regarding my busyness, indeed, Cooper says that lacking peace of mind, fearful of boredom, people are pushed and pulled this way and that. It's as if they develop desires in order to have something to do and aim at. And he warns of this, and because it's a Taoist book, and by the way, I'm actually an atheist, but I think it's very valuable to take in philosophies from any corner of the world and consider how they could be of help to us in understanding our own lives. But in the Taoist teachings, one needs to be mindful and follow the Taoist way, and consider everything we're doing and the deep reasons for it. And leading this mindful life and following this path would allow one to care for oneself, and care for oneself naturally carries over into care for other beings. So in other words, if each of us were to really be mindful of our own practices and our own motives, and lead the life that is best for us to create well-being for ourselves, that this would carry over into a type of care for the planet, ideally at least. Then the last source, second and last source I'll share with you was an online course I took for my Changing the Box assignment that Sarah has described to you. And this was an option that she had suggested, and I was really, I'm really grateful to her that I was introduced to this. It's a course on Dharma. It's called Dharma in Times of Heartbreak, with former Buddhist monk Thanissara, who's still practicing and teaching Buddhism. And she gave this 4-part online class that I registered for and watched the video modules of for this project in this climate change class with Sarah. And via the online course with Thanissara, I learned about dukkha for the first time. And a sort of rough translation of dukkha is that it is the experience of suffering or unsatisfactoriness, or of not being connected, of being disconnected, of not being at home. And as soon as I heard Thanissara talking about dukkha, I realized, aha, this is getting somewhere. This is really how I've been feeling for pretty much all of my life that I can remember. And I never really had a term for it or an understanding of it. And so I really appreciated being able to explore this concept. A few brief key takeaways from Thanissara's class. First is that we need to have a relationship with this experience of dukkha through reflection and mindfulness, and not from activity. So this is mirroring the teachings of David Cooper in his book that I just briefly ran through with you. And that this mindfulness will lead to empowerment, so that we can be fully present, fully grounded, fully rooted, deeply connected, not bowled over by states of mind, the different crazy stuff that's going down, people's reactions, etc. And that's in Thanissara's own words. I think that this is really meaningful to me, at least, to really get to the deeper reasons for doing what we're doing, and slow down, basically. And in fact, she says that what we're facing with climate change is something extremely difficult to face. It is suffering. And I really appreciated her even talking about this suffering via climate change as a type of heartbreak, that you know, it's extremely hard to let it in to the point where you feel as though your heart is broken. And I think it's very important for us to come to an understanding of that place and that pain and suffering, the dukkha, and sit with it and just be with it, and not try to deny it, not try to rush to fix it, but to, as she says, allow ourselves to meet the dukkha and see it as a profound journey. And if we have this sense of inner stability, well-being, perspective, and clarity, then I think we will be healthier as individuals, and then more capable of moving forward with actions to help to mitigate climate change as much as possible. Because even though we have this injunction, as she says, to stop the machine, stop the busyness, stop the maybe running from the problem of it. At the same time, we cannot stop speaking out. And I was pleased when I did some more research into Tanisara to see that she herself has participated with Extinction Rebellion. And she speaks in her online course of how Buddha himself was someone who challenged people to make changes and was a threat to the systems. And so it isn't as though one needs to just be passive and do nothing, but it's about finding that balance between self-healing and well-being and coming to terms personally with climate change, and yet still moving forward with taking action to prevent catastrophic damage as a result of it. And so I think that that's about it. Basically, we need to take care of ourselves, and I'm sure many of you have heard of the term eco-anxiety. And I think that we each have a responsibility to take care of ourselves in whatever way fits us or suits us best. And that's all. And thank you very much for listening. And there is my works cited.
Wow, what a journey, Amy.
I don't know how many minutes that was. I hope I didn't.
Well, I'm not telling you.
Okay.
It was just so fascinating. And so this was actually the second time that I've seen your presentations. And I really like the pictures because I think they were missing the first time I was in your field trip event. But I think now for this audience, I was actually promising a lot of people that they will actually go to Canada. I think the pictures helped us to meet you guys there. So very nice. Thank you. We just have to adapt a bit, but I think that's fine. So thanks again to all the three of you for presenting, and also making some of your work already visible. For example, on our blog, we will put more links. Also, Sarah has some things up on her website, so you can actually have a look later at it. Or also Sarah is very approachable, so I just bumped into her class and was saying, this is interesting, can you send me that, would you like to come to this event? So I think also afterwards we can stay in touch. So for the next step, questions that you already have, write them down so you have a chance in the networking rounds to actually put up your questions. And I just want to maybe shorten a bit the reflection round, so you actually have the chance to meet the three of the speakers in the smaller rooms. And maybe Sarah, you want to put a number 1 in front of your name as well, so people know later on. But I think it's not that hard because there are not that many people to meet like in your field trip. But I like the way how you allocated people then afterwards. So yeah, so we will actually allocate you to those rooms later on. And I just want to maybe make one round with the three of you where we've been discussing some reflective questions on, so when you look at the course as an overall framework setting, you all experienced it last semester, also under these circumstances, which I think were quite special. But we've been discussing about, so what were challenges that you had to overcome as a lecturer, but also as a student in class. What were success factors to run a course like this? Because I think some of us want to know that as well. And what would you do differently running it again, which I think is already planned and happening. So maybe if you just want to pick one aspect where you think this is really important to you now to actually state that in the whole group, we get more idea, and as well maybe something to discuss later on in the smaller groups. So whoever of you three wants to start, pick one aspect which you think is quite urgent right now for you.
Raka, I can start if you like.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I'm going to talk about the success factors because I found that the most successful part of my piece was found with having to work through the challenges. So it's kind of touching on a little bit of both, but more focusing on what was successful. So COVID-19 happened, and we were kind of sent out of the university, sent out of our studio. And this really had to change how I would approach our final project. It changed how I wanted to create it. It changed how I wanted to display it. But then this also changed how I would talk about it. And I think that the digital conversion was imperative for me to acknowledge how material wasteful being a visual artist can be. And while we enter the new age of the Anthropocene and are educating ourselves on the devastating effects on human existence and our influence on climate change, the role of the art object becomes trivial. And I think that this was more highlighted for me during social isolating. And I kind of started to think about if the role of the art object is becoming trivial, then the role of myself and myself as an artist is becoming trivial as well. How can the artist exist or be without their art? How can I be without it? And it's still a difficult conversation I'm learning to have with myself and other artists. How do you talk about that? How do you say, does the world really need another one of your paintings? Does the world really need another photograph, Mika? And how I would normally display this work is to have printed it out, created the holes that you saw, but with a physical punch using a hammer, and putting the holes in there was a very lengthy process. And so I would have had these physical things, and I would have put them into frames. And so what you're seeing online wasn't my intended final result. And so I kind of started to think about that as what I wanted to happen. I started to think about how material wasteful maybe it would have been to have had that final result, if that makes sense. Just kind of finding myself. I've always felt that art in all of its shapes, forms, complexities, good intentions, or outright failures, that the world has never been worse off because of art. It's always been something it always has something to communicate, provoking conversation and new thought. Art never intends to be stagnant, but how can art, particularly environmental or politically pointed art, be an advocate if its own existence is borderline destructive? And as I already mentioned, art making often relies heavily on resources and materials for creation or production purposes, gallery display or public presentation, perhaps means of distribution or shipping supplies, materials that make up the art, but there's also additional materials that are necessary for its existence. Materials that keep it safe when you're shipping it off to a gallery, materials for framing. And I have more doubtful questions than hopeful, optimistic answers about why I thought that this project was successful. But I think that it's the fact that this project and having to totally shift how I would think about art making, and how I had to take what I originally had planned and quickly just immediately change that and adapt not only my technique but my way of thinking of what is art, what makes it art, what makes it good art, was challenged by this. And I think that's where the success is found. And so I began thinking, is the art object still relevant during a climate crisis? Do we continue making art the same way? and how can we change our methods of art making to be more sustainable? And what would that look like? And again, this is still a conversation I'm learning to have, and I don't have a lot of answers at this time. But similarly to what Amy's thinking about, it's like, I'm thinking about how I can sit with myself and continue making things that are taking up space and continue using resources from the earth to create what I want to create. Like, how can I be okay with that? And it's a hard question to sit with, because this is what I've been wanting to do my whole life, because I wanted to grow up and to have a successful artist career. But I'm happy to have had the opportunity to have such a hard conversation with myself. And I think that's, at the end of the day, the most successful part of this project was the fact that I was forced to have a conversation that I wasn't willing to have at all before. And yeah, that's my little thing.
Thank you.
Sorry, I just realized I didn't put myself on the spotlight. So you could still see me from the little corner.
No, I have you in a whole group of everybody, so.
Oh, okay. Perfect.
Yeah, so it's always different, I think, at everybody's screen. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I think Sarah, you wanted to speak up as well.
Yeah, but Amy, actually, maybe you could go first. Is that okay with you?
Surprise.
I won't say a lot because I really hogged a lot of time before already, but I think for me, one of the successes of the class was, well, two things. It's such a refreshing break to be in a room with other people who care, for one. And so just being brought together with other students from different disciplines was inspiring. It was a huge inspiration to finally be with other people who take this seriously and who want to learn more about it and do more about it. So that was one success factor for me. And the other was as Sarah already pointed out, the diverse approaches to talking about and dealing with this issue in an art practice was amazing. Like there's so much creativity in us, and there are so many ways to speak about climate change and to say something. And for me, actually, that was also one of the challenges, was choosing what to do for my projects, because I mean, there were just infinite ideas rambling around in my head, and having to narrow it down and then choose one project for the Changing the Box, for example, or one topic for my paper was really hard. But that's great. I mean, it doesn't end with the end of Sarah's class, and it's again, it's motivating to want to go on and continue to work with this topic, as difficult as it is.
Thanks, Amy. Yeah, I'll say just a few things. I really am so happy with the way that the class came together. There's a really great energy and sense of connection with the students that just built every week. All of the students were very committed to the class. I've never been in a class where all the students did the readings. It's amazing. Right from the beginning, I would ask the students to have these discussions, answering certain questions in groups of 2 to 3, and immediately there's a kind of sense of intimacy and connection and depth when we do that with anybody. And then we would come back to the full classroom and the conversation would already be starting here. So I think that was a way to kind of accelerate the movement through the material, a response to the material, getting to deeper places. You know, the classes were only 2.5 hours, and we often were just like jammed up, if not going over. I was really happy the way the interdisciplinary element came together, and really for me, well, there were lots of fruits, like seeing how the readings just wove this beautiful tapestry of knowledge, and then the students responding and adding to that knowledge. We kind of were building this sort of beautiful bubble nest with all these layers. And I would say too that being able to connect with the public, to have seen that through, was amazing. For me personally, it was a challenge to actually, you guys might be surprised to hear this, but to do the breathing and to do the land acknowledgement every class. This is something that's really important to me, but in our Western culture, we don't do that. And so I'm in a class where I don't know what students are thinking, and I'm asking you guys to connect with yourself and the land. And by the end, I really had the sense that all the students really appreciated that. And it's given me even more strength and to do it more. I mean, I do it with the tree talks that I give, but in all contexts, we should be stopping and pausing and connecting and having gratitude. So yeah, I'm just totally over the moon with the way the class went. Done.
Done. Good question. Good point. So I'm actually asking myself, pausing a bit while I'm talking, if we should actually go into the breakouts, or if people have questions, because we are, well, some people I think have left, some people have told me they need to leave because they have something else. Some might have just dropped out. And we have like 15 minutes roughly left. So I'm wondering if people have questions now that you want to actually put forward to any of the three guests that we have. And then see, maybe we do a little one-to-one exchange in the end, nevertheless, but this is then completely mixed. So I'm wondering, are there questions now that, like, I've seen some people nodding when I was announcing or the option that we do it now in the big room. So are there questions right now that you want to put up? We've put already some information in the chat. There's no specific questions right now. Then I have a question for you. And I would like to ask, so Monica, you have an impression. You wanna speak up? Just open your mic and maybe put your camera on as well, so we can see you in Switzerland.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm really impressed, and I guess it goes together with what Sarah said, that you had the courage to breathe with your students and to go back to the floor, to the landscape. And this moment made, even it was very short, of course, but I went back to something very deep in my heart. And so this was a heart opener, that I can bring together cognitive or data-oriented knowledge together with my feelings. And that was very touching to see your artwork, Amy and Mika, because it's a sort of compression in this artwork. I mean, I studied John Dewey years ago, and he spoke about art as experience, and to make it as a, how to say, I know, verdichten, Frauke, to bring to densify. Yeah, exactly, and to transform it to a new message. It's a sort of working through. It's difficult for me to find this exact expression to bring my impression to you, to Canada. But I hope you understand a little bit what I mean, and what I felt having your presentations.
Yeah, and you also put the comment, and I don't know, Amy, if you've seen it, that the mountains look a little bit like Swiss mountains. and I was actually telling you when we were in that green room, the picture of the, what's it in English again?
Canola.
canola, right? Which is Raps in German. So this is a typical northern German landscape as well. So when you go out of the city here in Kiel, 10 minutes, you will find that as well. And you mentioned Heimat as well as a name, as an expression in your presentation. And I think, this is what fascinates me as well, being again in this digital virtual room. But there's something that connects us. And Monica, you were mentioning the connecting to the earth. And what actually, when I first looked you up, Sarah, that you actually work with indigenous issues as well, and especially with climate change as well, is something that in the Western world you were saying already as well, but especially in Europe, Western Europe is completely cut off and forgotten, and so this is why I thought it would be nice as well to have you as a voice here in this public climate school as well, because I know from Australia, for example, I lived myself in India for some months, Canada, US, there's some voices saying, well, this needs to be heard in this really global issue, and somehow we have cut out our listening to that in where we are. So this was also a little bit underlying when I was inviting you, that you are somehow, I mean, you probably also, there's a lot of disconnection, but even more, I think, where in our parts of the world as well. So.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Excuse me. Probably I can put that into the chat. You know, my favorite skill model is this one here. I can send you later on. And one part is to be self-aware as a new competence that we need for future. So it's even part here on this very official EU from Europe competence model.
Put in the structure.
It's in our heart, in our head. It is, but it doesn't go, as Amy told us, deep into this everyday taking care of us, taking care of nature and the whole cycle. You know, that might be very small and big in between at the same time. So now I close my mouth. Excuse me.
She's turning off the video.
Yeah, I thank you for sharing that. I'd love to have a link to that somehow in the chat, or but also really just going back to what you were saying about the heart and the mind coming together. That's just so important, because yeah, we're just so disconnected. So thank you for sharing your experience.
Yes, thank you.
Any other impressions? So I'm going to put Paulina and Fabi on the spot, and you guys.
I was just about to do the same. So it's not me as a teacher.
So I'll do it. Just wondering, you know, you guys are students at Kiel and interested in climate, and wondering how this all sounds to you.
I think, yeah, first of all, thank you very much for your impressions and your projects. I really like them a lot. And also the thought of disconnection from nature. I think I really, yeah, for me, I don't really experience it, but I see it a lot in society. And I think that's a really big problem. Yeah, and what I asked myself was how you the feedback was you got, because I mean, with all these like-minded people we work with, we really get very nice feedback, but I find it really difficult to address people that are not really aware and of all this climate change topic. So that is a thing that I'm really interested in, how you experienced that.
Do either of you want to respond, you guys? I think, Amy, are you on the verge? No. Mika? You're muted.
Sarah, how about you share first, and then I'll be inspired by your answer.
Okay, so Paulina, you're asking about how people who aren't on board with climate change awareness responded to us. Well, we were in a bubble, and that's the hard part. You know, we're constantly talking with the converted, and we converted get to expand ourselves in this conversation, but yeah, it's really hard to ask people to voluntarily join if they're not, if they're actually against this conversation.
Yeah.
We had somebody in the class who was connected to people who work in the oil industry, and so that was really great, actually, that he could carry back some of this information. So we kind of had links out, but nobody was linking in. Nobody really said, screw that bullshit stuff, I'm gonna join this class, you know. Unfortunately.
I guess for myself, I've been vegetarian for the last 4 years, and I'm from a family that on both sides raise cattle, and so I'm kind of a bit of the weirdo in the family. Talking with my family about why I'm vegetarian doesn't always go over quite easily, and I often leave like the dinner table like feeling hurt and like put down. And I think this class allowed me to come to peace with that, because there's other people in the world that feel as I do. And also, like, we kind of, this is maybe another topic, but we talked more about how to engage those conversations without getting angry, without like almost going into a debate about, oh, this is why I believe that this is okay, why don't you believe it? And then everyone is ending and leaving the dinner table feeling upset. And that also just made me feel more peaceful, of realizing that I could have a conversation about it and not start a debate with my uncle, and how I could leave the dinner table still feeling at peace, even though they don't share my beliefs. And then kind of just realizing that I can be a light and I can be an example, even if they don't see it. I can still eat how I want to eat. And I've actually had a few friends that have converted to a vegetarian diet, whether or not it's because they've seen me eat meat alternatives in front of them or not, but just the idea that like you can still like be making a change in your life, and people will see that, and people will take a mental note of that, whether they intend to or not. And I think that's the biggest thing, is not always bringing like a fight to the dinner table, but just eating your little meat alternative and being okay with sometimes being ridiculed. But this class helped me to be more with peace, of just realizing that people will disagree with me, and that's okay. But how's that put, Sarah?
Fantastic. I love that you guys remember things that I don't. That's great. Thanks for your question, Paulina. Fabi, do you want to say anything?
Yeah. Also, thank you, all guys. It was really cool listening to you, and it was really inspiring. Wow. maybe I can think of a question. Do you maybe also got some climate strikes of Fridays for Future, or maybe some stages of Fridays for Future movements in your cities, or in general, maybe in Canada? Maybe also took place?
Yes,
Amy
I
is
see question marks with Amy and Mika. I don't know if you understood, because I think that, yeah, the wasn't that loud. So I think the question was asking a little bit about the movement in Canada to get a picture. So I know Amy, and also she presented today that you're active with Extinction Rebellion. And specifically, Fabi was asking about Fridays for Future and Students for Future, for example. Is there movement on campus, for example, at your university? So maybe just give us a little insights on that.
Sure. The Fridays for Future movement isn't so much taking place at the university level, but there is a group of school-age youth who are running with it. And of course, right now, we have the added challenge of COVID and not being allowed to gather in person in public. But before that happened, and I'm sure again after, there was a good movement here. As you know, it's a smaller community. But I believe at the height, at one of our global demonstrations, there were about 1,000 people, which isn't bad. I mean, we also here in this province in Canada live with very conservative politics. And so I think that the quote unquote environment for this environmental activism isn't as encouraged as it is in other provinces. So given that situation, I think that we're doing quite well. We're building up a movement here in this part of Canada.
Slowly but surely.
I just wanted to, or just remembered a conversation or exchange I had with Sarah at some point, I think during her field trip, or maybe preparing this event together. So what she was experiencing in class, for example, with her students as well, kind of they were asking themselves, so we're working on this issue, and is it just us locally here, or how is this globally connected? And then you had this field trip on Easter Saturday, where a lot more students were presenting, and then all these international people came. And now I was stepping up and inviting you to actually come to Germany, and now meeting, for example, you, Pauline, and Fabi, from a very active movement here locally in a town that the Canadians probably have never heard of. So kind of making this connection visible through now the digital opportunities that we have right now, I think as well is making the movement stronger. But like for me as well, I think being more courageous myself, so I know that there's more people at my back or in front of my screen, and just making that visible somehow. So and it might be smaller, for example, at your end, on the streets, but through connections like these, I think it's really becoming visible, and through that, like, all of us are becoming stronger and taking bolder steps. And so I just wanted to make that visible, the conversation I had with Sarah at some point. So yeah.
I just wanted to say that, where do we go next steps? I'm with Mother Earth Justice Advocates, Mika, and we are holding a webinar. We wrote the Regina Declaration for a Better World. And the description of it, the webinar, to bring points together about this, it's on June 18th at 4 p.m. our time. And it's just we're going to talk about the declaration. It's kind of a first step if you wanted to consider it.
Yes.
And we are going to hold more after.
And please also, if you want to, for example, open it up to some of my students, for example, part of my class assignment is actually that they have to go and attend webinars that they can choose themselves on a topic that is relevant for them in their class. So on climate change, on social entrepreneurship, on social justice, I think is the area where you work in. And you have my email address, so please send me information if you want to get this international perspective in as well, and maybe some of my students are interested in joining them as well.
Thank you.
Or I might even have the time to pop in. So
Okay.
All right. So I'm just looking at the time. And one of my teacher colleagues, she was actually here as well, and I could see from her face she was actively listening. And she's actually living in a little village just outside of Kiel, and she was just complaining that her internet connection was failing her, so she was actually had to drop out. And it is 8:30 in the evening for us now, and I just want to acknowledge people's time schedules, whatever they have planned for the evening or for the rest of the day at your end. And I just wanted to thank everybody who was present today for the support as well. Fabi and Pauline, who stepped in as well quite last minute yesterday because I was just late in asking them. And for the people who showed up, Monica, it was really a pleasure that it also fit into your schedule last minute. And also for you, Sarah, Amy, and Mika for making the presentations. And again, for me, there was a lot of new things as well, very inspirational. And let's see how we can be in touch in the future. And I have your email addresses, and also if you want to invite people to some of your webinars that are happening now, or some of your class events, please let me know. And also we will make sure that we make the recording available, and any further background information you can approach Sarah or me, and I can then forward it on to the people who have been involved here today. So thank you very much, everybody, for being here, and have a good evening day.
Oh, thanks.
I just want to also say thanks too. It was really, again, special to be here. And thank you, Terry, for being here, and for everyone for your offerings. Monica, just want to address a few things you said in the chat, which was, yeah, the whole idea of breaking out of the box is, you know, youth are at that place where it's easier and to create a different future. And we did talk a lot about emotions, and yeah, and it was really nice to be here with everybody.
Yeah, I also want to thank you, Frauke, for putting this together, and I'm honored that you chose me to participate. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your reflections and being very, very personal about it as well.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Fabi and Frauke.
Bye.
Ciao.
Ciao.